I want to talk about a topic. I'm going to just say why I see so many Black women in their 30s are finding Jesus. And I want to talk about this from a deconstructed perspective.
Baptized on the 4th of February 2024. A few months before that baptism, I deleted all the dating apps and I was feeling very, very isolated and alone, quite depressed. And I said to God, I don't think I'm very good at this and I'm going to need some help to find my husband because I don't think I'm going to be able to do it alone.
Lately, I've been noticing something. And I wonder if you've noticed it too. There seems to be almost like a quiet movement of some young women, but mostly women in their early to mid-30s. Many of them influencers, creatives, content creators, women who've lived visibly full lives. Some could call their lifestyles hedonistic lives or not morally upright. To go from that life to being underground Christian believers, then suddenly announcing, I found Jesus! I've been baptized. I'm giving my life to Christ. Or I gave my life to Christ. I'm a Christian now. I know that feeling. That was me circa the millennium. The whole Nicki Minaj at Amfest 2025 to OnlyFans adult star Lily Phillips getting baptized in 2025 to Africa Brooke, who authored the book The Third Perspective. She's appeared on a few podcasts and she wrote, I am quitting the cult of woke. And I paused, not to judge or mock or to dismiss, but to ask a deeper question. Are these conversions purely spiritual and Jesus appeared to them? Or is something else happening underneath the surface? Let's get deeper into this conversation. You see, as a deconstructing Christian myself, I am aware that things like timing, context, and lived experience really matter. And I must admit, I felt some kind of FOMO, or is it nostalgia, as I started to miss being a Christian. Especially when someone announces their conversion to Christianity, you know that sense of, we are growing! And thank God they acknowledge our truth. Those moments actually felt good. I remember my highlight, my pivotal moment was when Kanye West started talking about Jesus and appearing in churches. But hang on, I am here where I am for a reason after all. I just didn't deconstruct because of the highs and the amazing conversion stories and the baptisms and the we are many, and there's a reason why I am where I am. And today I want to talk about this from a place most people don't expect. As someone who grew up inside Christianity and later found myself unexpectedly deconstructing that very belief. So what better person to talk about this than I'm female, and in my early 30s is when I was hardcore for Christians. I was in the Christian army. Makes me laugh, honestly. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Fatima and this is Undefined Life. It's a space for women who are questioning their religion, they're healing, they're finding themselves and learning to trust their inner knowing again. And I say women because I'm a woman. And I want to say this clearly before we go any further. I'm not anti-Jesus. I have never stopped loving the person portrayed as Jesus because I don't identify as atheist. And I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I am, however, not a fan of organized religion and its structure for reasons I've shared in previous videos. And I don't understand the God of the Old Testament at all. But I am here to speak honestly about some of my lived experiences and about the truths that we as women, we so often keep buried deep within us. These are the realities we rarely voice out, the ones that shape our conclusions in silence. And when we finally confront them, it's a process that is as much spiritual as it is personal. And as you listen to this video, you understand exactly what I mean. So stay tuned in. Something powerful happens when faith becomes our refuge in times of need. I get that. I've been there. And it's not just a sanctuary when we're in crises, but it's a shelter that nurtures us through the discomfort and shields us in the places we've tried to hide. Faith isn't just a hiding place because it becomes the force that sustains us when we face what we would rather keep masked. So let's talk. It's kind of deep. It's kind of like, conundrum there. But that's how I see what I'm talking about today. So I just want to go into my background in Christianity. So I was born into the Christian faith. My grandmother was Roman Catholic. My grandfather was a Wesleyan Methodist who converted to Roman Catholicism for some odd reason. Very odd to do in their day, that a man changes to the woman's religion. Church wasn't optional for us. It was life. And as a child, I was Roman Catholic. And at 16, I chose to become Pentecostal charismatic a month after my Roman Catholic confirmation. And I did that because the Roman Catholic did not feel spiritual enough for me. Sorry, Catholics. I still have the same conclusion. I think Roman Catholicism is, let me not get into that. But I want you to note this point is that distinction matters, because this wasn't me acting from rebellion or rejection, but it was actually from my devotion to Christianity. Nonetheless, it was a form of deconstructing and reconstructing. I just reconstructed and became Pentecostal charismatic. So later, age 25, after moving countries, I was going through a personal upheaval, and I did the Alpha course in Christianity. And honestly, it was beautiful. It helped me understand the Christian faith intellectually, spiritually, and from an apologist mindset, because that's what the Alpha course tries to do. It's like the case and the reasons for Jesus. Plus, the community formed in Alpha course spaces is amazing. However, it is short-lived. My long-term partner at the time was agnostic. And he'd met me not being very spiritual. We'd been together for 5 years, and I thought he was the man I would marry. And slowly but quietly, there was a clash rising between us. It was not dramatic, but it was enough to create this incompatible chaos as we tried navigating this place of me being this, I've found Christianity, and they're agnostic. And when the relationship ended 5 more years later, my interpretation was it was punishment, specifically God's wrath and punishment. I genuinely believed God was saying, you chose love over me, now suffer. And I remember sitting in church, my heart was shattered. While the pastor taught from 1 Corinthians, I think he was in 1 Corinthians 5 or 7, can't remember, but I know it's 1 Corinthians where it was talking about fornication. And I cried the entire service. And I made a vow that day that I would never live like that again. I will do life God's way. Like, I was like, if this is God's wrath, never again. Like somebody says, when a holy God comes after you, that's what Christians say. And then I just entered this perfection, spiritual, rigid phase of my life. And what I did is I stopped dating, I stopped fornicating, I became single and chose celibacy. And I served endlessly. There is no church that I was in where I wasn't involved in serving. And my life was there was a revolving door between my life and church. So it was like Wednesday church, Friday church, Sunday church, Saturday conferences at my own church or another church, weekend retreats, Bible studies. I was there. That was my life. I changed my music and listened to only Christian artists, fully. And I changed what I watched. I watched only sermons. That's what, literally my TV was just YouTube channels on something godly or just God channels, channels to do with Christianity. So if I remember, I listened to Priscilla Shira, Joyce Meyer, Sarah Jakes, and Ray Roberts, Stephanie Ike, Steve Furtick, Robert Morris. And I heard about what he did. Tim Ross, Andrew Womack, Bill Johnson and Bethel, Hillsong, Apostle Joshua Selman, Pastor Chris, Yakilome, Benny Hinn, Kenneth Copeland, Gloria Copeland, John Hagee, Paula White. Yes, I listened to Paula White. Craig Groeschel, Heather Lindsay, Jackie Hill Perry, Preston Perry, Joseph Prince, Francis Chan, Got TV, TBN, you name it. Music, William McDowell, Travis Green. I was a deeply committed evangelical Christian. But here's the unspoken belief underneath all that devotion. And that unspoken belief was, if I do this right, my life will finally work. After all, that's the diligence God rewards, right? Or as Lily Phillips put it, that challenges and hardships in her personal life had led her to look for God for guidance and strength. Back to my experience. I then met a Christian man. All was perfect. The godly reward was evident. We got married, we had a child, and suddenly, chaos, upheaval, carnage like I've never seen, showed up so much that nothing added up. The suffering intensified. The loneliness deepened. Persecution like no other. And for the first time in my life, I genuinely questioned my existence. And this is when I had a true existential crisis. And thank God for my Christian therapist. Thank God for my Christian therapist. And thank God for the pastor that I had as well, my pastor at the time. It was actually my pastor who was like, this is persecution, Because she was like, this is just unrelenting. What is it? I even had thoughts of unaliving myself. And that's hard to say out loud, but I did. I rang the Samaritans, who were awesome, by the way. And this is not sponsored. And what happened is I actually hyper-focused on checking my life as I had a sin paranoia. Because I was doing everything I was told was right, I ended up reaching a breaking point, and it was the straw that broke the camel's back, baby. And I can say to you that this was the breaking point or the epiphany. And what broke me wasn't God. It was the mindset I had carried into faith. I recognized that I approached everything from a victim and a beggar mindset. My prayers were never about partnership or partnering with God. They were about self-erasure. I died to self and I acquiesced to suffering. And it was more like, God, fix me. I'm bad. I'm broken. I deserve suffering, but please spare me, reward me if it is your will. And layered beneath that were years of unhealed wounds from trauma, from survival conditioning, from generational pain. In other words, I was convinced that bad luck had me on speed dial and that I was so fundamentally defective, always asking for, please, sir, can I have some more?
Please, sir, I want some more. What? Please, sir, I want some more.
And if self-worth were a currency, let me tell you, I was bankrupt of it. Talk about investing in a whole lot of nothingness. And growing up as an African woman in a post-colonial country, we didn't exactly get pep talks about living our best lives. We got masterclasses in survival, how to stay safe, how to stay out of trouble. It was never about how to thrive. So we grew up with endurance, long suffering, self-sacrifice, and self-abandon. Plus, we carried this silent strength was a badge of honor. That when Jesus says, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, I began to realize something mind-shifting for me. Yes, I was weary, but I wasn't free. I didn't feel free. That's also the time when I understood my approach to Christianity had harmed me. At the same time, I was recognizing that there were Christian doctrines that affirmed the harmful beliefs I held. They sort of helped to perpetuate this mindset of being broken and being nothing to God, nothing at all. And almost like you deserve suffering, you deserve what's happening to you. And so I stepped back, not because I hated God, but because my image of God was distorted. I had come to see God as punitive, conditional, always disappointed in me, in people, a God who couldn't wait to cast us into hell. I had to put that image aside to heal and find safety again. The same way someone abused by a parent might need to distance themselves from that parent to heal, to find safety before getting that reconnection again. But I never let go of Jesus, the Jesus who loved women, the Jesus who protected the marginalized, the Jesus who disrupted power structures. You know, I was just like, to me, that was the Jesus that actually freed me. And that's the one I'm going to hold on to. And then with that, I'm confronting history, things like slavery, colonialism, erasure of our self-worth, which is all God's divine plan. Think about it. The slave Bible existed and scriptures about liberation were actually removed from that Bible. You just have to do like a lot of digging. Like, why? Equality verses were erased to maintain control and remove hope in enslaved people. And I made a decision that is seeing Jesus as separate from institutional Christianity, because institutional Christianity is run by people with their own mindsets, their biases, their ideologies. And I just started to meet Jesus as a historical figure, as the embodiment of love. And that saved me. That saved me. Completely. So let's return to the question of this current situation of many young women finding Jesus. Why now? Why these particular type of women? Why Christianity? That's a really good question because there's so many faith beliefs out there. Many of these women lived freely in their 20s, like I did, dating, creating, exploring, and really enjoying unbridled freedom, unbridled fun. But in your 30s, especially as a Black woman, reality gets louder.
I just want to be a wife. I just want to have my husband. I want to have a house in the country, and I want to have some kids. Just become somebody's wife. Someone to tell me what to do. I didn't want to think for myself. I didn't want to work. I just want to be taken care of. I just wanted to be someone's wife. I desperately wanted it. That's it. Simple.
I don't know whether it's just Black women. Let me not segregate anyone. I think for a lot of women, reality gets louder. And existential crisis hits, which brings many biological or imperative desires to procreate and want marriage, to want children. We want to be partnered. We want to be in a stable relationship. And then we're looking at our longevity, which is also on the cards. You know, when you're 30, you kind of feel like, oh, I'm halfway through life. And what does Christianity offer? Christianity offers a model of marriage, a promise of provision from God, and He will provide a husband. There's a vision of partnership that's in Christianity that's modeled through scriptures. You get a safe masculine archetype who is surrendered to God, hopefully, and not to his loins. Christianity offers monogamy. It offers moral clarity on how to raise good children. We should ask, why Christianity and not Islam? Well, in my opinion, I think it's because Christianity allows freedom without having to veil yourself for a woman. You don't have to announce and wear a hijab. I have nothing against hijabs. I'm just saying, because I'm looking at why they become Christians. Christianity promises exclusivity in marriage. You don't have to marry a man who married loads of wives. It centers a man who appears Christ-like to become your husband. The structure of Christianity is also not too rigid and can be fluid. And what do I mean by Christianity is fluid? Christianity is fluid in that, you're not praying 5 times a day. You are reading the Bible. You've got that autonomy. And culturally, if you grew up in a Christian household, or even just culturally a Christian family, faith wasn't a belief. It was the atmosphere. Think about it. Grandmothers praying, your mothers are fasting. Church is the answer to everything that went wrong in your home. You either got home visits from the clergy or pastors, and if somebody was sick, the clergy or the pastors came to support you. And what was so interesting, Pew Research data findings of people returning to their faith found that many stay in the faith that they grew up in as it fulfills their spiritual needs, showing 61%. And 56% say it gives their lives meaning. So there's that search for meaning as well, which comes. So when you reach your 30s and life feels unsettled, what voices do you think are going to resurface? Of course, the ones that you grew up hearing. Put God back at the center. Invite Jesus in. That's why nothing is working in your life. You left Jesus, you don't have God. And subconsciously, a belief starts to form or can form. My life hasn't worked because I didn't choose God. So faith becomes a promise again. A promise that if you return, you finally get the husband, the home, the peace, the picture-perfect life.
I realize now, coming out of the relationship, how many women would have just continued the engagement, got married, had kids, but knowing what I know now, that things are not in alignment, and would have just done it so that they can check it off their checklist: marriage, kids, house, family. And I'm not going to do that.
And as prosperity gospel calls it, the blessed life, the prosperous life. But here's the truth we rarely say out loud. Some people found Jesus and lost everything, like me. And some people never knew Jesus and live full and meaningful, purposeful lives. We have to ask ourselves honestly, is faith always divine? Or is it sometimes deeply commingled with our psychology? And I know these deep psychological thoughts, mindsets, beliefs start to arise in us as they did in me. My life will work out when I put God back in it. God will give me a good husband. God will prosper my life if I follow him.
On the 4th of February 2024, a few months before that baptism, I deleted all the dating apps and I was feeling very, very isolated and alone, quite depressed. And I said to God, I don't think I'm very good at this and I'm going to need some help to find my husband because I don't think I'm going to be able to do it alone. And one of the things that came to me first was that my husband is on the other side of my baptism. The husband that I want and need is in Christ. My husband is not in my secular life, and I am not ready for my husband as I was then. As soon as I came to that realization, I made a pact with God. What we're going to do is I'm going to get baptized and I'm going to stay focused on my purpose. Whatever it is you want me to do on this planet, I'm going to do. I'm not going to fight you, I'm not going to quibble, I'm not going to cry about it. I'm literally just going to do as I'm told and be as obedient as a servant as I could possibly be. And in return, please can you, when the time is right, produce for me the man you have made for me. That same day, I deleted every single dating app, cut off communication with every man that I was speaking with, and then a couple weeks later, booked my baptism. Since then, I've got a book deal.
And Jesus becomes not just a savior, but a perfect substitute for companionship, for safety, for unprocessed longing while we wait for the one. Jesus is like an actual safe boyfriend or husband while we wait.
I'm 33 now. I wanted to remove myself from this planet because of the level of suffering that I was experiencing after a relationship ended. But it kicked the door open to so many other things in my life that needed to be looked at. Things that I thought I wanted, things that I thought I needed, but I was still on this search for a peace that I would never find. I was willing to try anything but Jesus. Every self-development book I've read, it was never a thought for me to pick up the Bible. I tried so many things to find peace within myself. I found myself on my sofa, crying, begging for peace, the peace that I've been looking for in absolutely everything. And I found myself on my knees praying. This was in April of 2025. And it was my first interaction with Christ, with no prior relationship, with no prior connection, with a curiosity that had been building up for a year, but with no relationship. I found myself in full surrender to Christ, and I felt a level of peace that I have never felt in my entire life.
The relationship aspect of Christianity is very enticing to someone seeking something similar and something comforting in their life. Think about it. As I relate with God, God will relate with me and my needs. But I want you to consider this. So I grew up Roman Catholic, went to a Roman Catholic high school, and we had a nunnery at my school. One thing I noticed back then, nuns entered the Christian faith with unwavering commitment. They took vows to remain single, celibate, and wholly devoted their lives to serving God. And they usually did this at younger ages. Although when I was looking recently, that's changed. People are becoming nuns at older ages. What I noticed when I compare people who chose to become nuns from a young age, it's like looking at, do they not have other desires like other women? I actually concluded that their devotion as nuns to Christ is one of pure faith, not need, not existential crisis. And it isn't determined by external social desires to have a husband, to have children, to be prospered by God. It's one of spiritual faith alone. So I asked this question because is the current trend of seeing young female influencers finding Jesus spiritually driven or need driven? Or is it both? What I believe deeply is our perception shapes our reality. If you grew up Muslim, if you grew up Buddhist, or you are agnostic with no Bibles, no church culture, what are the chances that Jesus will be the spiritual language or deity your soul reaches for? But if the Bible was always there, if Christianity was always the formula, the environment, the family religion, the meaning to life's uncertainties and crises, then returning to it may not be supernatural at all. It may be what is familiar or a natural bend of what we were always acclimated to. And remember, familiarity always feels safe. Familiarity is comfortable, especially when life feels uncertain.
What's actually happening here is much deeper than Christianity. What rock bottom forces you to admit is that you've lost control. And so what you need in that space is some form of secondary control. And beliefs, particularly beliefs in a powerful God, give you a chance to say, I'm not in control, but someone is. And research shows it's not hard to find that whenever you have material insecurity or your personal control weakens, you're more attracted to external systems that promise some kind of order, especially God. So this is human nature across the board, across religions, before our modern religions, where if you're in rock bottom, you are at a place of acute psychological need and you will cling to whatever system of order and structure that you can find. And the reason that Jesus is particularly enticing during this time is because he's giving you a lot psychologically at once. He's giving you that need for control, but also attachment, that parent figure. You're also getting forgiveness and a way to process your shame. You're getting meaning, you're getting identity, and you're getting community, and you're getting all six in one system. So at rock bottom, people do not just suddenly become better at evaluating metaphysical evidence. And it's not just that they're humble and so now they're open to the truth. It's that they are in such a high demand of psychological need that something like Jesus can be really helpful where you feel like truly your life got better.
I looked at further Pew research, which shows that while many adults leave their childhood faith, a significant portion returns or stays, often due to positive childhood experiences, strong family discussions about religion, finding meaning, Lily Phillips said, fulfilling spiritual needs, and believing the teachings. And they found that retention is higher with those who had childhood religiosity and among older adults, with most switching occurring before age 30. But many non-affiliated also revert to religion later in life. I believe this strongly. It's what is familiar and we can identify with. And Christianity offers something more powerful, which I would say were things that I found when I was really following Christianity, were the things that I felt made it unique, even though I wouldn't say so now, having read about other religions. So there's the atonement. You can atone for all your unbridled living. You get forgiven, so there's forgiveness. Then now you've got a clean state. You are a new creature. A story that explains why things went wrong. And if it's not working well, it's not me. It was the devil. It's the devil. Or it just isn't God's timing. And that can feel incredibly relieving. That in itself is like, I can absolve myself of this heaviness. I know how I felt, how I thought before I deconstructed. And when I look at my story, I grew up in the faith, I backslid in my early 20s and returned to it fully devoted for 10 plus years, which was in my 30s, until I found myself deconstructing the very faith that had become my whole identity. So don't think my deconstruction was just easy. I've had to do a lot of reinvention. I'm still reinventing myself, or is it reconstructing? Here's what I want to say gently but clearly. Faith cannot replace any healing we need or must go through. Spirituality cannot bypass self-reflection or avoidance. And Jesus cannot be used to cover wounds and traumas that we must face. Because what happens is there's no growth, and cycles end up being repeated in families, in generations, when they're not addressed. You can marry a Christian man or woman and still find yourself unsafe or in an unsafe marriage. You can serve God and still abandon yourself or be abandoned. You can believe deeply and still suffer unnecessarily. No one, categorically no one, in life is exempt from facing hardship or challenges. Light must always be brought into the hidden places of your life. That's what Jesus actually taught. And I have a video where I was talking about Christ consciousness, why I believe in it. And I believe it more so when I hear people who didn't grow up with a Christian faith talking about Jesus appearing to them and what he said or meant. Anyway, that's not for this video. So in closing, I recognize that today I love myself, which makes it easier for me to love others. I show myself compassion. I question my reactions. I question my mindset, my thoughts. I work on my character. And I believe Jesus walks with me, not as a judge, but as a guiding light. If you're deconstructing, if you're questioning, if you're returning to yourself, you're welcome here. But just know I'll never tell you what to believe. Just like I had Christian therapy, but my therapist never told me what to believe, even though she advocated more for Christianity. And that's why I chose to have a Christian therapist. Because whatever decision I was going to make ultimately was going to be mine. I didn't want to say I was influenced by a secular therapist. But I invite you to listen inwardly. Because the kingdom of God is not just in a book, it's within you. If you say God is omnipresent, omniscient, think about it. Is he really just in a book? There will be some women discovering Jesus within Christianity, while others are choosing to walk away, but with Jesus or without, beyond the boundaries of a Christian identity. I remember my own journey, how fear gripped me at the thought of deconstructing my faith. I was terrified of losing my community, of not recognizing the person I might become, and of facing the unknown, particularly when it came to the afterlife. That was like a chokehold. The struggle was relentless, but I reached a breaking point and I knew I had to step away for my own sanity. And now I stand on the other side. I am here. And I'm more than okay. I know some might not get it, but remember, I'm not mocking any of you. I understand. I've been there. So I know that journey. Look, it's really in my heart. I even know the emotions I felt. But I cannot lie to myself in the noticeable transformations I've had from stepping away. The proof is in the pudding.
Hear me and hear me clearly. There's nothing wrong with having a desire to be a wife. There's nothing wrong with having a desire to have kids. Some of us are so caught up in the ideal picture of a family. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but everything in God's timing. And I feel like I had to go through this because I don't look at marriage and children the same way. I think before I really desperately wanted it deep down. And now I'm like, Lord, if it happens, praise God. If it doesn't, praise God. And I think that I will be a wife one day by God's grace. I will be a mother one day by God's grace because I'm not so desperate for marriage.
If this resonated with you, subscribe, like, and share this with a woman who's questioning quietly. Leave a comment. I read them all. And if this conversation stirred something in you, if you felt seen, challenged, or even uncomfortable, perhaps that's a sign. I don't know. Comment below choosing faith or familiarity, because that also kind of lets me know where people are. And remember, you are not broken. I'll do a part 2 where I go into some of the things that happen to us as we are older and when we leave organized religion. Because it's so meaningful for societies, even though I also believe it causes a lot of division. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And I say everything I said in this video with understanding and seeing why people are returning to their faith. But I know one thing, there's some exes I won't be going back to. Bye.